Morning guys, and welcome to this Training 20. It is Functional Friday, and today we're focusing on the side plank. Quite an advanced exercise, so we're going to go through the basics and build it up throughout this session. Because it is an advanced exercise, if you struggle with a lot of things today and just right off the bat really struggling, then don't worry about it. It's something that you've got to work towards. It's not something that you can necessarily expect to be able to do straight away. It's a really good exercise to start bringing into your workouts and your training, but you've got to build up to it. So hopefully this helps you today to get there. But if you struggle with it, then let me know and I can help you get towards it before you even start looking at the side plank. But getting right to it, side plank wise, we're starting with a raised kneeling side plank. So I've got this raised box here. This can help you out first of all if you struggle with basics. So what you would need is something like this, just something, it can be higher than this. You can use a sofa. You preferably want it quite low though, and all we're going to do is bring yourself out here and straighten up. So I've got a dead straight line from my heel all the way up to my hip and all the way up to my shoulder. Dead straight line here, like so. That's what we want first of all. From there, I've got my elbow directly under my shoulder here. Obviously with it being raised, it's a bit like lifted, but for now just keep that under the elbow. What we're looking to do first of all for a kneeling side plank is bring those feet right behind. So now you can see my heels are right behind my knee at a right angle, and then my knee is still in line with my hips and still in line with my shoulder. They're the three key points we're looking for in this kneeling side plank. So feet behind me for support, on top of each other. Knee, hip and shoulder need to be in line. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my hand here to push myself up, and I'm going to put my weight onto my forearm with my elbow. The elbow you kind of want, you can have it slightly behind the shoulder. You definitely don't want it in front. Have it slightly behind if you prefer to have more weight on the forearm. But at the very minimum you want it directly under the shoulder. But yeah, so slightly behind I recommend, just so you can put more weight into the forearm itself rather than just driving right down into the elbow. I'm going to use the hand to push up here, and then we're looking for those three key points again, or four if you include the foot. So making sure that foot's behind the knee. That's not so important. The most important thing is having your knee, your hip and your shoulder in line here, like so. Now the reason we're using this raised box first of all is because if you can't get your hip off the floor, then it can almost be pointless to do a side plank first of all, and this isn't as easy as it looks. Doing it raised is a lot easier. So what we need is to make sure we've got some gap, some air between your hip and the floor. So find your hip bone, you're lifting that hip bone up, and because I'm using this raised box, there's a huge gap there. So as long as you've got that, then you're in this strong position here. We're making sure we are in line with those 3 points. So that is what you want to make sure you're in. Whilst we're in that position, we've got to make sure we're tucked on, like we've worked on before, and the core's working. So if you remember, from down here, we don't want that arch position like so. We want to make sure the hips are tucked up, the core is then engaged and driving to the floor. This is what the core should feel like: braced on, core strong, flat back, okay? If we can get that in that side plank, that's exactly where we want to be. So let's bring it back. Forearm down. Use a hand if you need to. What we don't want to do is, this is arch, so I've got an arch back, my stomach's kind of out, my hips are off. I need to tuck those hips up. So I'm squeezing up. Then I've got a straight line on those 3 points. I'm going to keep going over it. The knee, hip, shoulder, straight line. Elbows under my shoulder as well. And I'm tucked on. Squeezing the glutes, hips tucked up, core strong. The final thing is making sure you're lifting as high as you can. Now you don't want to overlift, I'll say high as you can. We don't want to be over here like so. But you can see if you're overlifting, because as you can see here, my shoulder is certainly not over my elbow. So whilst keeping the shoulder over the elbow, we're lifting as high as we can with those hips. We don't want to be sagging down. This puts pressure on here, but it means you're not actually using those muscles, you're just kind of relaxing into it, putting more of the weight into the glute here. So we've got to forcefully keep our hips up like this position, therefore using all this core down inside, using those obliques and keeping up right like so. So it can't just be sagging down, you need to be actively driving up into that position and holding. And that is it, that is the side plank. And that is the easiest way to do it, with your raised up so you don't have to worry about getting the hip off on your own. So that's where I 100% recommend to start. Now, if you can do that, then we're going to look at a few other ways of doing it. First of all, I'm going to go through the kneeling on the floor. So I'll show you on my other arm. So exactly the same things we're looking for here. I recommend getting your elbow under your shoulder first of all, and then sort your legs out. So legs out straight, everything's in line, those 4 points are in line. Take the feet away, so they're behind the knee, and then you've got those 3 points in line. Use your hand to prop yourself up, and that's where we're holding that side plank there. You can see I've kept my elbow under my shoulder, but I'm lifting those hips. This could constitute as a side plank for some people, but it's a very inefficient one in terms of we're not using the core. So I'm technically, my hips off, technically on a side plank, but we want to be driving up like so. Core strong, hip up, really activating the muscles we're trying to be working on. There's no point just sitting down here. It's like doing a plank like so. I'm technically in a plank position, but my core's on, I'm in that arch position. Most people know that, but what you can find here is people just kind of prop up and just lift the hip. It's not about that. We don't want to be doing this for a long time like some people think. You don't want to be holding planks for minutes if you kind of just start sagging out with it and losing the intensity. These exercises help to build up your strength, so driving up strong. If you can't hold for very long, then good, build that up. But don't think you can kind of relax down into it. We want to really focus on keeping up and strong. Now, keeping that hip up is harder than it looks, and getting it off the floor is very tough too. Some people prefer a straight arm, so I'm going to show you the straight arm as well. Now the straight arm can sometimes feel better for the shoulder, sometimes feel worse. Definitely feels more off balance. What it does do, like the raised box, it gives you that more height, so you don't have to worry too much about trying to get that hip up. So all you do is same again. You've got your shoulder directly over your wrist rather than your elbow. Go through the same points, but get those knees behind, 3 points up here. So this is an easier side plank. You can shuffle your hand out a little bit here. This is easier in terms of on the core, but it's a good way to practice, especially if you don't have anything raised. But it's definitely not as effective on the core generally. It's more working that shoulder stability, which is a good thing anyway. So if you are really struggling with these forearms ones, then I recommend starting on the straight arm. Still an effective side plank, but you're probably putting more focus on the arm than you are on the core. Once you've nailed that side plank position, you feel the core working, you're in that straight position. There's 3 exercises I'm going to take you through. These are the 3 I tend to do anyway, because they're my favourite 3 when it comes to side planks, but they're also very effective in regards to testing your side plank. So there's a few ways you can kind of fall out of the side plank, and these 3 exercises are a good way to test it, because if you perform them wrong, then you're definitely going to make one of the mistakes that we don't want to be making. So the first one we're going to do is a hip up. So a hip up plank looks at the control. So we're here, we've got that hip up. Technically we're taking the hip down. I don't like calling it hip down because we're focusing on the up. So what a lot of people do here is crash down, hip rest down, and then they drive back up. That would be the same idea as doing a bench press, resting it, and then pressing back up. It's not very efficient, there's no strength in that control there. So we want to call it hip up because we're thinking about the hips up. You go control down, literally tap the hip, and then control back up. So this is our resting point, not the bottom. Obviously it's not a resting point, we're working that core. But you got to think, we're never resting at the bottom, we're literally tapping the bottom and driving back up into that top position, like so. So mistake one here would be just dropping down and back up. Again, feels like the exercise, but again, nowhere near as much work. So we want to be driving up, controlled down, and back up you go, okay? So great exercise there, those hip up planks. Very effective on building that core strength because you're going through the motion of that side plank. Exercise 2 is a reach through. Now I'm going to show you this one in a few ways. The exact same position, just to remember, elbow and the shoulder and those 3 points. Going to keep going over. Reach through, you're going to have one arm up, you come underneath, and then you open back up. Now you feel that twist of the core, you're twisting under. What we don't want to see is the hips twist under. So what you sometimes see here is that big rotation where I'm losing my knees, my hips fell forward, and this all constitutes back, thinking about those 3 points again. So my knees are out of place, my hips have sunk back so I can rotate under, and I've lost the integrity of my side plank. So 3 points come first. 3 points on, arm comes under, I rotate with the torso, but only as far as I can with the torso. So my 3 points are on, I'm just reaching as far as I can. You won't be able to reach as far as you would if you lost the 3 points, but by maintaining the 3 points, we are able to work the core a lot more in this position. So whenever doing the reach throughs, we're keeping that core nice and stable and on, and not losing the integrity of our side plank. So that is mistake number 2, when we kind of lose the plank position in order to try and reach through as far as possible. It's not a competition to reach through, it's all about the side plank itself. And then exercise 3 is the crunch. Now this is just a great way to practice your balance. Again, can be done on the knees. So bring it back here, we're up like so, you bring a hand over, and you bring your knee to your elbow and your back. What you can do with this knee down one is have your legs straight out like you would in a full plank, like so. This is the same as the reach through in terms of the mistake. It's just a totally different exercise. Doing it above requires quite a bit of balance, but the thing is the same in terms of if those 3 points aren't on, then we're losing the integrity of the side plank. So what can happen here is we kind of sink down into it like so, like that. Always lose our balance, our bum sinks backwards to be able to do it, and you can see that sometimes when we can see our elbows and knees are right forwards, or we kind of just lose it backwards, but that's not very common. The main thing is sinking that bum back or sinking it too low down. The way to do this one is to be up in that straight line first, and we're thinking of keeping our arm and our knee in line with our body to maintain balance. So our knee and elbow keep above the body, like so. That's where we want to be for those crunches. So it's all about those 3 points, all about keeping the hips up and directly in line with the body. That said, we're going to take it onto the full plank now. So I'm going to go through the same things with you and just cover the same points. It is the same stuff. There are a few things to focus on when you're in a full plank, as it is a lot tougher. First of all, positioning. So rather than taking those feet back, we've obviously got the 4 points now. We've got your heels, your hips, and your shoulders and your knees. So all 4 need to be in line, like so. And then all we're doing, first of all, you've got an option. I say all 4 need to be in line. I prefer it like this, just preference, having one foot on top of the other. What you can do is, if you prefer, the foot that's underneath can go slightly in front, and the foot that's on top can go slightly behind. And as you can see now, my knees and my ankles aren't in line, but they meet the hip, and the hip is in line with the shoulder, like so. So a lot of people may prefer this one if they find being on one foot on top of the other uncomfortable. It really doesn't lose the integrity of the plank. So either way, you can see here, although my feet are moving, the integrity of the plank is staying there. So the choice is yours. Choose the one you feel most comfortable in. I'm going to carry on with my feet on top just because I've always preferred it. So I'm going to keep swapping over, so I'm not use one side the whole time. So like I said, I'm going to use both feet on top. We're going to go through the same thing. So first of all, straight arm plank can make it easier. Up here like so. As long as you've got that shoulder over that wrist, you should feel okay here. Again, not as much on the plank, quite a lot on the arm, and quite a bit hard on the balance. Otherwise, it's a great way to practice the side plank balance. Maybe not working the core as much, but you're practicing having those 4 points in line and in that strong position, as well as building up some good shoulder stability. So don't knock this one first, definitely work on this one first. Once you've got that sorted, we're going to be on the forearm as we were before, like so. You can always use this hand to prop you up, and then you're up. And then the same rules apply. As long as you've got those 4 points in place, and this hip is driving actively off the floor, then you're going to get some good work in. It's obviously quite a bit tougher with it on the feet. Core's got to work a lot more, but as long as you have that side plank integrity where you've got that nice straight line and you're holding that position nice and strong. I'm going to take you through the 3 exercises to finish off. Same thing here in terms of the kneeling plank though. All the same points apply, so I won't spend too much time on it. But it needs to be covered because it's obviously a lot harder to balance when you're in this full plank, so working on the balance is key. First of all, hip up plank. Dropping that hip straight down, controlled, and then back up, like so. Keeping that straight line in, focus on driving those hips up. Exercise 2 is that reach through. So this is a lot easier to twist under here. So if I show you, what we don't want to do is I can roll onto my feet a bit, twist under, and start to rotate the hips as well. As you can see, I've lost that side plank integrity by not having the knee, hip and shoulder in line because my hips fell forward and came out of line, like so, okay? So with the reach through, it's not about how far you can reach, it's about maintaining that position. Up you go, reach under, try and keep your hips facing forward, and then reach back up. Reach under, and back up. Hips staying up, hips facing forward, going for that twist there, okay? So a lot easier to roll forward, but avoid that. Exercise 3 is the crunch. Again, much harder balance-wise here, so take your time. The hardest thing is keeping it right above you, so right above rather than in front. But that ultimately does help with balance. Keeping in that straight line will help. If you're in front of yourself like this, you're more likely to lose balance because your weight's coming forward. Whereas if you try and keep it directly above, like so, so arm over the top, meat at the top, and back down. If you're here, you're either going to be pushing your bum backwards to compensate, or you're just going to be rolling forwards. If you're having to push that bum backwards, then again, we're losing that straight line. So make sure you're up here, bringing that knee to the top, and back, not kicking that bum back, right above, and back we go, focusing on that hip the whole time as we're into that crunch. And there we have it, that's the side plank. Load of exercises there for you to try, just make sure you're doing them right. It's very simple in terms of how to explain it, so those 3 points or 4 points, we're always focusing on them. Just carrying out is very difficult, so work your way up to it, let me know how it goes, and give me a message if you're really struggling. Otherwise, have a nice weekend. I will see you next week, and I'll post the new schedule on Sunday as always.